Coming from a high-profile, affluent family, she fled Afghanistan with nothing but a bag of clothes. With her mom, they fled to Germany and then to the States. Today, she's sharing her journey, the lessons she learned from her late father, and the strength her mother demonstrated. My guest this week is Neda Olumi, a speech therapist and someone passionate about supporting others. Someone with a pragmatic view on empowerment through education, especially children. So go ahead, grab your cup of tea and join me in this episode of Empowering Conversations. Hello and welcome to the Empowering Conversations podcast, a place to get inspired, challenged, and empowered by stories of immigrants who build their success from zero. I'm your host, Mehran.
So I was 13, right? It happened right around the time when the revolution happened, when the Russians invaded Afghanistan. Because my family, they were high-profile family. Like my dad was a Supreme Court judge. One of my uncles who was living in Iran at the time was a foreign prime minister for the King Zahir Shah. And my other uncle was a general in Afghanistan. So once they invaded Afghanistan, they were looking for all these high-profile families, and they were either being put in jail, being killed. It was around that time, 1978, and my dad happened to be out of Afghanistan at the time, because after every judgment, he would just take a little short trip to Saudi Arabia to visit his cousins. So he wasn't at home. He wasn't in Afghanistan when that happened. And he passed away there, unfortunately, around that time in his sleep. I was the only one at home, and I was 13. My brother, who was about 20 years old, and he was home. So basically, my mom kind of decided that, knowing that our situation, that she decided that she's not going to stick around to see what's going to happen. So she knew a lot of people in the government. We just packed one suitcase and she said, we're going to leave. So she got a visa. And basically at the time, because my dad just passed away, they give her a visa to go visit his grave. So she got me out, and my brother, being young, he was just recently married too with a newborn baby. So she got me out, and we came to Pakistan. And right before that, my uncle, who was a general, he also escaped with the family, came to Pakistan. So she came and dropped me off at his house and went back to Afghanistan to pick up my brother and his family. So then they had to travel through the skies, basically. So they paid somebody to just travel and get out. So we left everything in Afghanistan. We left bank accounts, we were home, clothing, except just one suitcase that she grabbed and go. I was living in Pakistan, and my mom was in Afghanistan, and it took her about 7-8 months to get them out to come to Pakistan. So from Pakistan, living there for about a year or so, the first country that was accepting political refugees was Germany. And Germany accepted us, me and my uncle and his family, to come to Germany. So I traveled with them, and we came to Germany. And shortly after, my mom, my brother, his wife, and the kid came to Germany. And then I went back to live with my mom. So from Germany, we didn't want to live there because my sister, I already had a sister who was married to an American Italian here in U.S. because U.S. at the time was not accepting any refugees unless you had someone who will take care of you. So my sister and her husband became sponsors, our sponsors, and then we came to Chicago. And that's when we kind of started building our life back in Chicago, and then we moved to Virginia.
What year was this?
This was 1978. We left Afghanistan, lived in Germany for 4 or 5 years, and 82, 83, we came to Chicago.
Let's talk about your experience as a refugee in Germany.
because you lived 4 or 5 years there.
My experience as a refugee in Germany was actually a pleasant one because they didn't like Turkish people. For some reason, they were against Turkish. I don't know what it was. But so the very first impression that they would give me or on my family, they would, because we had darker hair, they would assume that we were Turkish. So they would be kind of negative. But as soon as they found out that we were from Afghanistan and knowing the history of what happened in Afghanistan, they were super helpful, super nice, and they would just go to the extent to like help out as much as they could. So when I came to Germany at the time, we just had a nice little apartment, me, my brother, his wife, and it was in Erfstadt in one of the smaller city, really about 20 kilometers away from Cologne. And I think I was like 15 years old when I went there. So I found a job, like it was just down the street, like it was a little bakery store. And I wanted to kind of learn the language also, and I didn't know anything. So we signed up for a language class, and I went there every day to like learn the language. That was a really unique experience just while I was learning there. So our teacher had a little jar right at the door, and she said, as soon as you walk in, and he was very good. He was teaching all these refugees German language, and he would say, as soon as you walk in, there's a jar. So the minute you stepped into the classroom, you couldn't speak anything but German. If you were heard to speak your native language, you had to pay money into that jar. So that was his way of getting us to like be motivated to speak German, because there was a lot of Afghans, there was a lot of Turkish, there's a lot of different ethnicity, and we were all in the same class, and he did not want that to become like a social thing. So he wanted to make sure that if you have something to say, you have to say it in German, even if it's like broken German, because that's how you're going to learn the language. So once I learned a little bit language, and then I used to go to this bakery store all the time, and there was an older couple there, and they always used to like, for some reason they were drawn to me and they liked me, and they always invited me to sit down and have some tea, and then they would give me pastry. So then I got the courage to ask him, can I work here? And they're like, oh, sure. So my first job was a kind of dishwasher, like I was loading up the dishwashing machine. But they helped me out a lot, because every day they would talk, I practiced my German with them, and my broken English, because I spoke a little bit of English at the time too. And so it was a really unique situation. That was like the first time, and I practiced German with them. So it was nice to do that.
Discrimination exists. It existed in 1980s in Germany when Neda was a refugee, and unfortunately it exists here and today. Last week on our 17th episode, JP Millen, the board member at CVS, shared an example. Unfortunately, as an immigrant, we all have experienced discrimination one way or the other. So to bring awareness during this very special time, please write to us. Write to us about the time you felt discriminated against, whether that was your accent, your nationality, your skin color, your ethnicity. Don't worry about your identity. We will read them anonymously if you choose to. And if you found a solution, share it with us. We will give you the full credit if you choose to. To do that, you can find the link on the show notes or send me an email directly at mehran@mehrans.com. You can find that in the show notes as well.
I see. So you had a pleasant experience as a refugee in Germany, and you learned the language, you went to school. And then what happened?
So while we were there, like I said before, that we were trying to get to U.S. to come to America. So it took about a good couple of years for all that to go through, for my sister to be able to show that she's responsible, and she would take responsibility for us. So me and my mom, we came to U.S. and then following that, my brother and his wife and the child. Well, at the time that he had 2 kids, because he had another child in Germany. So, but 2 kids that would come to U.S. So when I came to U.S., we lived with my sister for a while, and then I attended school. So at the time I was 19 years old, basically. So when I came to U.S., and I was at the point that I should have been graduated and I should have went to college. And because my English was very weak, even though that I had some English background, since my dad was always pushing me when I was younger to learn that. But it wasn't to the point of learning to go to college. So when we came, and my mom and my sister, we went to the high school, the counselor that we had there, he suggested that for me to, because I looked very young, so he said, you know what, why doesn't she start as a 10th grade? So spend a couple of years in high school and learn the language, the basis, because going to college with very limited language, it would be a tremendous harm to me. That was a very unique situation for me because I was like very embarrassed to tell people, when people ask me how old you are, I would be embarrassed to say I'm 19 and I'm still in 10th grade. So I learned really quick to say, what do you think? So if people say, how old are you? I said, what do you think? How old do you think I am? And if they said, you look 16. I'm like, yeah, I'm 16. And how I learned English is like I was taking classes, but I also, this counselor of mine, was really a nice man. On my break, at lunchtime, on my break time, and then after school, I would go in the office and he would give me jobs and he would tell me to go file this and do that. So I did a lot of office work for him. And he would help me out with my homework, whatever homework I had. Something interesting that I learned, that the classwork wasn't hard. Why? Because the only thing that I didn't have is the language. When I was in Pakistan and Afghanistan, whatever I learned when I was in 8th grade and 9th grade in Afghanistan, America, they were learning that in 10th grade and 11th grade. So we were 2 years advanced compared to American schools. So to me, like, math work was very easy. I just whizzed through it, and science was very easy. The only trouble that I had is reading the English and learning that part of it. And I remember my very first experience, and I had to do like a speech in my biology class. I was petrified, like, oh, how am I going to do this? But my teacher, again, was I still remember her name, Mrs. Smith, and it was an African-American lady, and I loved her because she was so drawn to me. She always wanted to help me. She wrote a little speech for me. So she goes, as simplified as I could, and it was something had to do with dissecting a frog or something, and we had to do a presentation. So she put me with another partner who was a very nice American boy, and he make sure that, a lot of the hard stuff that he would do, like talk about it, and a lot of simple stuff, I would stand up and talk about it. That would also kind of give me courage to talk more in public and learn more.
So then what happened? Then you went to college, as we talked the other day.
So I started college. I went to community college. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. I wasn't sure. My dream was I wanted to work in a hotel management. So that was like, because I knew I wanted to be around people. And I kind of took classes here and there. Because art was one of my things that I really enjoyed. I wanted to be an interior designer. So I was like designing these things. So all these kind of all over the place. I was all over the place. And once I finished my general education in college, right around the time, I had a friend who was a physical therapist. And I said, okay, I think this is a field that I want to do. It's kind of nice. I deal with people. I have my own hours. So I started taking classes at San Diego State for physical therapy, just elementary. And then, right, lucky for me, I guess, I injured my shoulder, and I had to go to a physical therapist. His methods were like, hands-on. He wasn't using machinery. So that kind of got me more excited. Like, okay, this is really what I want to do. Because it took about 6 months for me to get back to normal with my shoulder. And he basically told me, and he goes, let me give you an advice. If you really like the methods that I'm using, you can start working. I don't have any doubt that you're going to become a physical therapist, but you're going to be out in 6 months. So that was kind of very disappointing to me. I started sitting down and researching to see what else I can do other than physical therapy. When I was in San Diego State, I took this one class that said speech. So I took the class and I sat down, and then there was a young, very young girl came out, and she said, my name is so-and-so, I'm a speech therapist, and I work for the hospital, and I'm doing my master's program, and I'm teaching this introductory class. And I'm like, so what is speech therapy? So she told us what speech therapy was, and every day, every time that I went to class, she would come and she would bring stories of her day, like how today I work with so-and-so, today I did this, today and that was like, so I was so intrigued. So I took more classes. I got my bachelor's degree, and I said, I want to go for my master's. So I applied and I didn't get it in San Diego State. And I was very disappointed. And it was all based on politics. They only accepted people from outside of San Diego, because if you came in from outside of San Diego, you brought more money to the school. And they told me, don't take it personal. It has nothing to do with your GPA. It has everything to do with how much money somebody's going to bring to the school. And right around the time they started Cal State Northridge, they started this cohort program, meaning that you didn't have to physically be there to get your master's. And they were looking for people who wanted to be the first kind of guinea pig, the first cohort. I had no idea what that was all about, so I applied and I got accepted. This was like a 3-year program. At the time, I was married and I was just having a newborn baby, so like, I cannot move, so what am I supposed to do? And I got my master's degree. So the only time that I actually saw my teachers were on my graduation day. So I actually went up to LA to graduate, and I put my cap and gown and I graduated.
Many of us expect to have a clear path to our dream job, to know exactly what we want to do for the rest of our lives. On a daily basis, I talk to men and women who are frustrated with themselves, not knowing what is the next step for them. Especially with all the changes we're experiencing at the moment. As you heard today, Nada didn't know. She wasn't sure, but she tried until she found her passion. Coaching tip: successful people say yes to every opportunity that is granted to them. They full-heartedly try it. They learn from it. And if it doesn't fit their interest, they professionally disengage from it, but keep their relationships. You never know when those relationships become handy.
You're a single parent and divorced in a community that frowns upon, this. Many women stay in unhealthy relationships because they don't want to rock the boat. They don't want to change their image because they are afraid of what others think about them. All the gossips, all the judgments that goes behind that notion. I was wondering if you would like to tell us about your experience and the things you've learned along the way.
My experience is probably going to be very different than anybody else's because of my dad. We are 4 sisters, 1 brother. And he always, I'm the youngest, but I always remember him saying, when my oldest sister was getting married, saying this to them and then to all of my sisters and to me is, you stand on your own 2 feet. Because the day you go out, you get married, if you have a happy life, great. If you don't, then you don't have to run home to dad to say, help me, or run home to another family member, or stay in a bad marriage because you have nowhere to go. He was very much against men controlling women. and trying to make a woman submissive and dependent. My mother was an independent woman. She worked, although that the money that she was making, it wasn't going toward the house. It was all for fun because my dad was supporting everything, but he never stood in her way of getting a job and working. She went out. I remember this, like she would take me and my brother out, out of the house, and without like telling my dad where we are going. And so when we would come back, and my dad sometimes be too afraid to like ask her, where did you go? Right? So he would ask me, like, where did your mom take you guys today? And I would say, like, we went to the movies, we went to that, because my mom was a very strong-headed person, because her dad was made her dad strong. For me, it was very easy. The minute I knew that my relationship with my ex wasn't working, I had no problem getting up and leaving because my family supported me on that decision. It was right around the time I was going to graduate school, and I think I mentioned that as like I was doing everything online basically while I just had a newborn baby. So it wasn't a hard decision for me to do. And I tell that to all my friends, to whoever I meet, don't stand in a relationship that doesn't work for you. The minute you feel that you're not being the priority of that person, that you're not being accepted for who you are, leave. I had to deal with few families when I was working at the high school level. There was few families, and I used to be called a lot to be a translator. And this one lady that I met, and I until today, every time I think about that, it makes me cry. An Iranian woman came in with 4 kids, and the husband had depression, and he used to abuse the kids. And every time that they would come to school, for whatever reason, that they had a meeting for this child, because the kid was a rebel, he always got in trouble, and every time he got in trouble, they would call me to come and translate for the parents because they didn't speak English. And she would like pull my hand and pull me aside, and he said, help me get out of this marriage. And every time I think about it, it makes me cry. And I would say, I can't. The reason I can't is if I help you today to go get out of this marriage, what are you going to do? Where are you going to be at? I can't bring you to my house to help you with 4 kids. You have to stand on your own 2 feet. You have to learn the language. You have to learn what a work, something to do. If you can do that hidden from your husband to work or to learn the language, do it. Because then that gives you power to leave. Because as a person you have nothing in a foreign country, you want to leave your husband. There's no place for you. That's why when I say education is important, when I say you come here as a refugee, the first thing that you need to do is educate yourself. To learn is because of these. Because if the minute you know that you're not happy in a situation, you're not happy in your marriage, things happen all the time. People get married, they're madly in love, and then all of a sudden 2 years later they say they have nothing in common. It happens. So why stay in that situation and live in an unhappy situation? Because that also affects the kids. If you have children and if you're in an unhappy situation, what are you teaching your kids? You're teaching them that you need to be submissive, you need to stay in this marriage no matter what. The biggest reason that I left my ex, that we were not looking things eye to eye, also is to teach my daughter that you can do better. That I'm not one of those people who will just sit here in a marriage. Because at some point the kids are going to leave. They grow up and they leave. Then who's going to be left behind? Is that person who stayed in the marriage because of the kids.
Am I the only one who wonders what would have happened to Neda and her family had she not had the strong-headed mother she had? The story reminded me of Homa, another refugee who made an enormous sacrifice for her family. If you haven't listened to her story yet, go back and listen to our 6th episode. I know you will enjoy that one too.
What do you teach your daughter?
I teach my daughter to be independent, to be strong-minded. I've also always taught her to learn that not to be be proud of yourself, but don't show it. Don't show that you're so proud that people will not want to approach you. To be a part of the community, to give back. And when she was younger, I used to, in the summertime when I worked, I used to take her to work with me to see the kids who are less fortunate than she is, that she can be grateful for how much she has. I used to, on Thanksgiving, a couple of times I took her, we would go to the shelter, homeless shelter, and we would serve food. And then just to teach her that the things you have, the opportunities you have here is way more than the kids that have in Iran and in Afghanistan. I want you to appreciate that. I want you to be thankful for that. And when you get to a certain point in your life that you can give back and help out, then give back and help out to make somebody else to where you are. That's the main thing that I want to teach her. And I think I've done a good job because she's 21 and she's very compassionate toward others, very compassionate.
That's wonderful. Now, what is success to you?
Success is being able to give back, teach back, not just to me, like, material stuff is not important. We briefly talked about that on the phone the other day. Maybe at one point it was like I always looked for that made me feel successful. Like if I bought like most expensive purse or this or that made me feel successful. Not anymore. Right now, success to me is, what am I doing when my education, with my background, how am I giving back? How am I showing others what to do? That to me is success.
What is your dream?
I started painting, a few years ago, and when I was younger, I was doing it, but about 6 years ago, I met this amazing, wonderful Iranian woman, Nasrin Khairi, that I was in a very dark place after my mom passed away. So meeting her through a friend kind of brought me back to life. So art became my passion. And I would go there and I would sit down and I would paint for like 2-3 hours, and I would come home and I paint. So after a few years of painting, and I would just give away my paintings here and there. But one of my cousins kind of picked a painting that she really liked, and she left me like $100 on a table when she went back. And I was like, why would you do that? I mean, you could have just picked it up for free. But she goes, no, you worked so hard on this, and I want you to, at least I know it's not enough, but just, something. So that kind of gave me an idea. So maybe I can turn this into like a little side business. So in 2017, I rented a booth at our, it was a big festivity for Afghans for Eid celebration. And I rented a booth, and I said, okay, I want to see what kind of reaction I'll get from Afghans. A lot of people kind of really, really welcomed me. And then I sold a few paintings on that day, and they loved what I did. And I was like, wow, this is great. So maybe I can sell more. And my cousin, who was working just a couple of years prior to that, working with a charity organization, a nonprofit, is called Helping Hand Relief for the Poor. There are a few ladies who started this charity organization. They were helping kids who had medical conditions. They were helping families, poor families, with food, with whatever they needed, education or whatever. So I always wanted to do something back for my community or for the kids in Afghanistan, but I never trusted any organization to do so. So I became a volunteer with them. So basically, as a volunteer, I can go to concerts and I can raise money there. On whatever painting I sell, I will donate part of my paintings to this organization. I don't want to know how you guys are using the money. So that was the first couple of years. And then that year, 2018, they started doing a project. They called it Eid Project. They were raising money for Ramadan, for Eid Ramadan, and then they also for Eid Qurban. And then our volunteers, we have volunteers in Afghanistan right now in 3 provinces, Herat, Jalalabad, and Kabul. They would go and look for these families who are really the poorest of the poor, basically. They did their measurement, these kids. They found a tailor, so they tailored all these clothes for them. They bought the toys, they bought the art supplies. So on the day of Eid, they invited them, or the day before, or something like that. They invited them to this, like a hall. They brought them sweets, tea, whatever, or, give them something. And then they had music, they had dancing. So they give them all of that. For that one day, you are making the dream of a child come true, that there's better days in life than for me to just sit there and go as an 8-year-old or a 5-year-old, go work. A 5-year-old should not work. A 5-year-old should enjoy their childhood. But they have to work. They have to get ends meet. So if there have 5 or 6 people in the house, the minute you learn how to walk, your mother puts you or your dad puts you to work, because they need all hands. Otherwise, one person can't provide for 8 people. So they go beg outside on the street. They go polish shoes. They go, sell pencils or whatever it is. That's work. Their childhood is being taken away from them. We want people to donate $25 per child. That $25 makes a whole lot of difference for a child in Afghanistan. Buys them a set of clothing, buys them a set of shoes, and give them a little bit of fun stuff, maybe a toy or art supply, so they can look forward to something better. The kids that we're helping, they have never celebrated Eid. They don't know what that is. That's my dream.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful.
Yes.
Thank you again. It was great talking with you.
It was a pleasure talking
and
to
I
you.
wish you the best of luck in all you do.
Thank you so much. I can't wait to hear all of this.
I saw a video from Nada's nonprofit organization, Helping Hand for Poor. Their mission is similar to Toys for Tots during Christmas time. Except because of the currency exchange rate, your money goes much farther. For $25, they celebrate a full day. They tailor traditional fancy clothing for the kids. They give them shoes. They give them toys or art supplies. If you would like to donate to this beautiful cause and bring a smile to a child in Afghanistan, find their website and the Venmo on the link below. And become a helping hand for poor. As always, thank you for listening and sharing our immigrant stories and writing us a review. Your reviews energizes us and help us to be found easier. You, my audience, mean the world to us, and I know I will have you and your friends in the next episode of Empowering Conversations, where all of us can learn from successful immigrants, one conversation at a time.